I'm Rachel, welcome to my channel. I'm really sorry about that noise in the background. I'm in the classic car boot sale in London's King's Cross. It's held twice a year. I always try and come. It's amazing. It's like a sort of celebration of all things vintage, and it ties in perfectly with this week's video, which is a vintage pattern review. I'm going to jump back to the studio to do the pattern review, and then at the end I'll be coming back to the car boot sale to show you around. I will timestamp the video, so keep watching. Let's go. So this week's pattern review is a little bit different, just because of the nature of vintage patterns. I've chosen 5 decades, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 2 patterns from each, and it's focused on blouses, because I know everybody loves a blouse, so I thought I'd make it a little bit focused. Otherwise, there was so much to look at. I just thought it was a better thing to do. So these are, okay, so I'm not a vintage pattern expert, and for purists out there, just to explain to you, these are reproduction vintage patterns. So either from the big 4 or from 2 particular companies who specialise in reproducing vintage patterns, either in printed form or PDF, okay, to be clear. And for purists out there, I'm going to talk about sourcing actual physical old vintage patterns after this, because there are a couple of places that are particularly good for that, and I'll also talk about sizing as well. So let's start the actual pattern review now. Okay, so I'm doing this by decade, so it's not in order of preference, but I personally think they're all really nice, obviously, because I chose them. So this first one is 1940s, and it's from the Vintage Sewing Pattern Company. It's a 1940s set of 3 blouses. I think partly the illustrations have really sold this to me, with the beautiful floral print, the sort of placement print idea, just absolutely gorgeous, and it's sort of based around sort of peasant style blouse, and then this revere sort of cropped one in the middle. So to be clear, this is a vintage reproduction pattern in PDF or printed form from the Vintage Sewing Pattern Company. It's actually size specific, because vintage patterns, as I understand it, were produced in single sizes. So you'd buy it in your particular size rather than the contemporary multi-size patterns we have today. And this is in a 34 or 36 to 36 inch bust. So we've got this lovely round neck version. They all look like they've got padded shoulders, gathering at the neck with the lovely full sleeves, and then this middle version, which is cropped to the waist. It looks like it's got some sort of drawstring finish at the hem with a tie, sort of waterfall revere type collar, gauging into the shoulder yoke, and a short sleeve with an exaggerated sleeve head. I just think they're really elegant. And then finally this square necked version with a nipped in waist. It looks like it's got sort of a tuck effect around the waist. Really beautiful. So that was the first one I wanted to show you. Secondly, again, this is from the Vintage Pattern Shop, and this is a reproduction printed pattern, and it's a Vintage Simplicity pattern from, I believe it's from 1947, the 2144. And again, excuse me, you've got 3 variations around this extended top, I would call it. It sort of sits at hip length, and it's, I would say that's semi-fitted. So you've got a simple round neck version with a beautiful drape detail around the hem. You've got another simple version with the centre front slit, and then you've got with long sleeves, and then you've got 3/4 sleeve version with this little sort of revere collar, and they all look as if they've got this sort of gauging at the side front to give it really nice shape. And on the 3/4 sleeve and the long sleeve version also, they have these tucks to give the sleeve some shape and I suppose that helps achieve the fit. So sort of quite interesting details there. So you've got the 3 variations, and this was designed for a 32 inch bust. And if you're thinking, Rachel, that's not my size, these patterns come with information to resize. So, but as I say, we'll talk about that later. Right, so that was the 1940s. These are all going to be linked below as well. Right, moving on to the 1950s. I love this one. Again from the Vintage Pattern Shop, 1952 blouse and also pedal pushers, which capri pants straight pedal pushers are back. And I will be talking about those in a video soon. So this is around 1952 and it's a McCall's Vintage Pattern 8820. A tunic blouse. I like it tucked in. I mean, you could possibly make a shorter version if you wanted to wear it tucked in like that, and also a long version. So it's got a stand collar, a centre front placket, extended sleeves with a turn back cuff, and really nice back detail. I don't know whether they're pin tucks or pleats, I'm not sure, but just a really nice silhouette, I think. Again, so this is from 1952. Okay, so moving on to, and that was a 33 bust. Moving on to this gorgeous blouse. Well, it's two variations on the same shape really. And this is from the Vintage Sewing Company. It's called a 1950s blouse, PDF or paper, and Revere collar, button through, bust darts, back darts, ending in pleats, I would say. I think they might be front and back. I don't think there was a working drawing for the front, but you can see on the illustration it looks as if there are two tucks that are tucking into the skirt waistbands there. And you've got this long sleeve version with a lovely turn back button cuff, or a 3/4 sleeve version, and that looks like just a band, a sort of straight band cuff. So that was the second one from the 1950s. Moving on to the 60s, Vintage Sewing Pattern Company 60s blouse, and there are a few variations. I really love this. I think the style in the yellow caught my eye, but I actually really like at the back there's a green illustrated style, and it looks like a border print, which I think is very of the moment. So this is a reproduction PDF or printed pattern, and you've got a few variations there. So the main image, Revere collar, sits just above the hips, button through front bust darts, and 3/4 sleeves. And then I think you've got a long sleeve version as well, and a sleeveless version, and a collarless version. So a really nice sort of clean looking pattern there, really nice shape that would look great in a textured plain, but also a border print or an all over print. Quite versatile, I think. So particularly like that one from the Vintage Sewing Pattern Company. It's a 34-inch bust. I'm wearing this one. This is the first that I'm going to show you from the Big Four. So the Big Four, as you probably are aware, offer reproductions of some of their vintage patterns. So this is a retro Butterick pattern from the 1960s with 4 variations, and I have shown it to you before. I'm actually wearing it now. I extended the ties to make a big bow, which you can see here. And vintage patterns were either I think they were made in single sizes. They're made in different sizes, but you would buy it in a single size. But when you look at the listing, you'll see that they usually say, if they've added sizes, I imagine they're saying additional sizes, and this is one where they said they got additional sizes. So there must be additional sizes to the original pattern, I imagine. So it's the same body shape, and I've made it as I just said, and it's very easy to make. And you've got the high tie or the slightly v-neck shawl collar tie, the one with the sort of the double flounce, and then one with a little v-cut end. So you've got 4 variations there, but a really really lovely sort of versatile shape from Butterick, and that's a modern pattern, but it's a reproduction. Okay, so 1970s, this again is a modern reproduction pattern from McCall's M8257. I'm particularly focused on the main image in yellow of this top because when I was growing up, so I'm 58, I I was born in 1967, so when I was quite young, I used to wear tops just like this, and I think it's absolutely lovely. And it's in sizes extra small, small to medium. That's the first side set, and they've got large, extra large, and extra, extra large, and it's actually from 1976, I believe. So it's a caftan style top with lace trim, and I think that is so 70s. It just really, really takes me back. Okay, moving on to, now this is a vintage reproduction again from the Vintage Pattern Shop. It's a 1970s pattern, circa 1972, I believe, the 6898, and it's 4 variations on a wrap blouse. So you've got sleeveless, I mean, with the gauging at the front, wrap over with a tie at the hem, and I guess there's some fastening inside as well. You've got long sleeve versions. I really like the ruffle collar version that they've got there. Nice long sleeve with a full sleeve going into quite a deep cuff, which I thought was particularly nice. And then you've got one which is extended as well. So it's not on the waist, it's actually slightly longer. So a few variations there. That's the Butterick 6898 vintage pattern from the Vintage Pattern Shop, available as a vintage reproduction pattern, printed, and yes, it's a 36-inch bust. Okay. Moving on to the 80s, this is the last decade. If you're wondering, I mean, I suppose I could have included the 90s, but I think I still can't quite come to terms with the fact that the 90s, which is a decade that I absolutely love, and it doesn't feel very long ago for me, is called vintage. So, you know, that's all I'm saying. But anyway, I'm prepared to go back to the 80s. This is a modern reproduction from Butterick, and I think it's just come out. It's a 1980s Butterick B7093 vintage reproduction pattern, PDF or printed, with additional sizes. Long sleeve, sleeveless, or short sleeve. With the same collar front, crossover front, and gauging into the yoke. It's a really nice style, actually. As soon as I saw it on the Simplicity website when it came out recently, I thought, that's possibly one I might like. And last but not least, the Vintage Pattern Shop 1980s Vogue Individualist Izzy Miyake pattern 1792, circa 1986. Now, when I was sewing when I was a teenager, there were absolutely loads of great Vogue designer patterns around, and there aren't now. And you can actually find these, and I'll show you in the next bit of this video. I'm going to talk about where you can find these, but I chose this one, very much of its time. It's got that Izzy Miyake handwriting. This is available in a 38-inch bust, and it's got that sort of interesting crossover folded hem at the front, and I believe it's just a straight hem at the back, and a drop shoulder, and a single pocket on the left hand side as worn. Yeah, as I say, lots of Izzy Miyake vintage and inverted, I don't think of them as vintage, but vintage patterns available. So those were the 10 that I chose, and I'm going to move on to talk about where you might buy actual old hard copy existing vintage patterns next. So first of all, I just wanted to talk about, before I go on to buying actual physical vintage patterns, I wanted to talk about the sources for the patterns we've just looked at. And it was very intentional that they're mostly available online, because I've got an audience all over the world, and I wanted you all to be able to access them. So firstly, obviously Simplicity.com, who have a range of vintage reproduction patterns from the archives available as PDFs and hard copies. A lot of them are new size sets, so they won't be true to the original vintage patterns. They're probably I think they're actually extended size sets. And I suppose originally, I understand that vintage patterns were made in single sizes rather than multiple sizes as they are now, so they differ slightly. Then we've got the Vintage Sewing Pattern Company, UK based. They do PDF patterns and reproduced printed patterns. You've got an option of both, and I believe they might have actual physical hard copy vintage patterns as well. You can shop by size, garment type, eras, blog, and they've got lots of additional info on there. The other company, again another UK based company, the Vintage Pattern Shop, specialise in hard copy reproductions of vintage patterns. You can shop by decade, and they also have a lot of designer patterns and knitting patterns, but I did notice in the designer pattern section they had about 65 Izzy Miyake patterns. Fantastic. Some of them you can get, I know, on eBay and other places, and some of them have got hugely inflated prices, but you'll find a really good range on the Vintage Pattern Shop's website. And I wanted to show you a Vintage Pattern Shop pattern that I bought a couple of years ago. So I think everybody is familiar with the Diana von Furstenberg anniversary version wrap dress. It was covered to death on YouTube, and I did it too. And I ordered this pattern before it came out on simplicity.com. So this is the pattern shops, the Vintage Pattern Shops version of it. So this is what you get. You get this. It's quite a lot of information, and it's basically all the information you would get in the original pattern envelope with the lay plans and all the instructions. But in addition, you get the history of Diane von Furstenberg. It's fantastic. And also, because it's a vintage pattern and by its very nature, you may have to alter it. Information about making alterations and a size grid there to put your sizes and the pattern measurements in, So you've got all of that. So don't be sort of scared about maybe the fact that it's not your exact size. So those are the three sources that I used for my pattern review, and I just want to talk about sizes. So vintage patterns are smaller, and if you go by the conventional size 10, 12, 14, and you look at the actual measurements on the pattern, you'll see that they're way smaller than those equivalent contemporary sizes. So I don't think that should put you off. I mean, to be honest, when I am buying any pattern, any contemporary pattern, I know my measurements, and I will look for the correct size for my measurements. And a vintage pattern should be no different. You just have to ignore the sizing, perhaps. The other thing is, a lot of these patterns that I showed you, like I said, oh, well, that's in a 33-inch bust or 36-inch bust. They're available in one size. Because patterns, I believe that they were produced in one size, in different sizes, but a pattern was in one size rather than multiple sizes, as I understand it. But these companies give you instructions as to how to alter them. So my tip would be to search for your patterns available near or in your size set, and then maybe you've only got to take it up or down a size. And so it's not quite so scary. But these websites are brilliant resources. I mean, 65 vintage Izzy Miyake patterns is enough to make me happy for life, to be honest with you. So that was just an overview of where I found those patterns. Right, so if you're a die-hard physical vintage pattern fan, I just wanted to talk about some of the places you might actually buy proper patterns, and I had a quick look. Now, I haven't linked these below because these are on the second-hand market, and the links won't stay live for the life of this video. I hope you understand this. So you can actually search for similar patterns yourself. So, okay. The first place I looked, right, I'm in the UK, and there's a charity called Oxfam, and they have a website, and they sell some great vintage patterns. It can be although it can be hit and miss. It just depends what they've got in stock when you go on the website. So I'll actually put the website address below so you can look at it. But I have actually got some really interesting, where's it gone? I should have pulled it out. Some really interesting patterns from there. And this infographic, as I make this video, yesterday I had a look at their website, and these were 3 patterns that were available. So you've got this fab shirt dress from Calvin Klein, this sweet full skirted dress from Butterwork 3364, which looks 1960s to me, and then a Donna Karan Vogue American designer pattern, which I would say is probably early 90s, with wide palazzo pants and a nipped-in jacket. So the model sporting one of those quite big sun hats. So they're well, as of yesterday, they were available on the Oxfam website, which is a British website. But this is one that I bought, I may have shown this to you before, from Oxfam a little while ago, and it's a Claude Montana tailored, semi-tailored jacket and culotte pattern, and you can also make the jacket as a waistcoat, which I think is really cool. So it's on the list to be made, along with many others. So that's one that I actually got from Oxfam. Moving on to eBay, these are a couple of examples of vintage patterns that I've seen on eBay. The blouse on the left, I think you should be looking at it on the left, beautiful 3 variations on a really sweet blouse, short and long sleeves from the 1940s, and on the right just a brilliant 1970s pattern, Vogue Americana Oscar de la Renta. I wish Vogue Patterns would still do this. I mean, they've got it, honestly, some of the archives they must have there. I mean, it's just a shame. It really is. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't understand why they don't reproduce a lot of these. Okay, and more from eBay. Look at this Ralph Lauren pattern. Do you remember? I think this must be sort of in the 80s, this sort of mid-late 80s, this sort of prairie girl look with the full skirts and the blouses, almost a bit sort of Laura Ashley, and then this 90s Givenchy pattern from the John Galliano era from Vogue Patterns. These are all on eBay, so fantastic. They may still be there when this video comes out, but you know, you could have a look. And then moving on to Etsy. Actually on Etsy you can get vintage reproduction patterns in the same way that I showed you the vintage pattern shop and the other company that do reproduction patterns. So there are people on Etsy who do that, and I think those companies may also be on Etsy or eBay as well. But these are physical hard copy original vintage patterns from Etsy. This beautiful cape jacket from McCall's, and in the middle this sort of early 80s, well, it looks like a 2-piece. I think it's a sort of halter, bias cut halter top and a full skirt, which I would wear that now. I think it's fabulous. And then a Christian Dior dress and jacket set. Really fantastic. So some online sources there to buy physical patterns, and I have recently discovered, I don't know if you go on Vinted actually sell fabrics but also patterns. They have quite a lot of contemporary patterns, but they also have loads of vintage patterns, and of course in the real world, in real life, you can go to charity shops and vintage shops to buy vintage patterns too. So I thought I'd round this off by showing you some of my vintage patterns. I'm sorry if you've seen some of these before. There may be some new ones here, I don't know. Anyway, I've got quite a lot of Vogue designer patterns from when I was younger. So this is a Calvin Klein, excuse the state of the envelopes. Vogue American designer Calvin Klein, 3 blouses, well loved. 1987, and then another Calvin Klein, and this is from 1985. 3 really lovely shirts. That's another one I've got. And then DKNY, these are bodies. So they have shirts with knicker attachments to them, which are great, which are quite now really. I've seen quite a few of these around in the shops. And then I have another DKNY, which is kind of like a tunic pinafore dress. Sorry, wrong way around. You may have these patterns as well. You might remember them. I mean, you may well have them in your stash. So do share your comments. And then this is Donna Karen rather than DKNY. Beautiful draped skirt and trousers. And then I've got a couple of Izzy Miyake ones. I've made both of these in the past. I don't have the garments anymore, but they're right for being remade. These go for quite a lot on the second-hand market. So this is a Izzy Miyake sort of billowy drawstring coat pattern that I have. And then another sort of large quilted reversible overcoat look from Izzy Miyake. So those are some of my vintage patterns, but I can't get my head around the fact that they're vintage because they're from when I was younger. And then I have got a couple of sort of older ones. These were in my mum's stash. Look at these flares. These super flared trousers and shirts. And then this caftan, which is very Margot from The Good Life. And then this is Jacques Griff. This is a Vogue Paris original. This was gifted to me by my cousin Sally, which I'm yet to make. I'm saving it for a special occasion. So I hopefully will be able to make that later this year for somewhere that I'm going. I think it's lovely. It's kind of like a two-piece. So it's like a shift dress and also like a shift top, which goes over the top of it. So it's quite interesting. And then this is one I bought most recently, and I may have shown it to you. I bought this at the Forest Recycling Project in Walthamstow, and American designer Bill Blouse, and I like the jacket. I am going to make that as a sort of bomber jacket without the bit below the elasticated section here, if that makes sense, for the summer. So I need to make that quite soon. So those are just a few of my vintage patterns. So before we go back and end at the Classic Car Boot sale, I just wanted to show you a couple of dresses I'd made from vintage reproduction patterns. So you will have seen them before. The one in the animal print is a 1940s dress. It's the Butterwick 5209, which I love. I should be taking that on holiday again, and I can't wait for the weather to get warmer so I can actually wear it. It's halter neck, quite easily to put together. Yeah, it's a great shape. And then this 90s pattern, dead stock fabric from Rainbow Fabric from memory. This is from the cause 8504. Love that dress. And if you're wondering what this, I think it's lovely, this lovely fabric is, it is, well, it only arrived with me this week. I don't know if you follow Rainbow Fabrics on Instagram, but they've had a drop of Farm Rio dead stock fabric, and that's what this is. I think it dropped, it might have been, it was earlier this week, and it dropped at 6 p.m, so I was there on my laptop just waiting, and I bought 2.3 meters. It was a cut length, and it's got this placement floral design on it in a sort of it looks like it's embroidered, but it's not embroidered, it's printed. So I just wanted to share that with you. I thought it was particularly lovely. So that's going to slot into my summer holiday wardrobe, either in a little dress or some floppy trousers or a sarong. I don't know, I haven't decided. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that and you found it interesting. As I say, I'm not a vintage pattern expert, but I do like the aesthetics of vintage patterns, and as I said before, I think they're an absolutely brilliant resource, and I hope maybe I've shared with you some resources for vintage patterns that you don't know and that you have now discovered. Please do share anywhere you buy vintage patterns, or maybe some really special vintage patterns that you have and some projects that you've made, whether you love vintage patterns, maybe you don't like vintage patterns. Share. It's always interesting to hear people's point of view. So I'm just, to end this video, I'm going to share with you some more of the Classic Car Boot sale. I hope you enjoyed it, and let's go back to King's Cross. So the classic car boot sale is held twice a year at London King's Cross, and it's at Coldrops Yard. I think they have it elsewhere in the UK, but I always go to the London one, and usually it's in the spring and the autumn. This is currently in April as I visit the show. It's a real celebration of all things vintage. It's a lot of fun, so if you're a vintage fan, it's an absolute must. It is fabulous. So as you can see, you've got all sorts of stuff. You've got everything from clothes and accessories and shoes and denim and cowboy boots to objet d'art, household items, books and magazines, anything vintage you can think of, really. And the sort of vintage community comes out in force for this, and people dress up. There's music, and there are street food stores, and it's just a great event and a great atmosphere. And Coldrops Yard itself is worth a visit, even if this event is not on. It's a redeveloped, regenerated area behind King's Cross St Pancras in central London, and it's been beautifully done, and it's got lots of restaurants and nice shops. Here you can see some of the fabulous cars that were there, great big American cars, absolutely enormous, quite spectacular to look at, and a bit smaller, Fiat 500 there. Yeah, so me and my husband went. We really enjoyed the day. We had a little drink at the bar. You'll see the bar in a minute. It's a very special bar. There's DJ booth, people are dancing, and there are some great outfits. I'd really like to do this one year and actually dress up in 100% vintage, but I haven't quite got the clobber for it as yet, and if I do it, I would like to do it properly. There are some people who are a bit dressed up, and you can see just in the distance there it's a red London bus, and that is actually the bar where you can have a little drink, and in front of it you've got this sort of impromptu dance floor. And this is towards the end of the day as I film this, so people are sort of gathering and having a drink. This is a Sunday, perhaps not as busy as the Saturday. I think it's been busier on a Saturday when I've been, but still it's a fantastic atmosphere, as you can see, and an awful lot of fun. And they were like super lucky with the weather this year. I think it's been sunny on both days, because as you can imagine, in the rain, not great. I have actually been there in the drizzle. Here's the little DJ booth, which is next to the bar, and there I leave you. I hope you've enjoyed this week's video, a little bit different for me, and I shall leave you with some dancing here, and I look forward to seeing you next week.